Hi, everybody, and welcome to Recovery View, our live edition. This is our 57th edition, and if you're on our mailing list, our email list, we have many of you, about 60,000 on our email list. You should have received the 57th edition of Recovery View today with the notice of this show. If not, the show will be, you'll be able to click on at later times. And for those of you who are watching us now, I just want to thank you for that. And for those of us who will be watching us in the future. So we're very excited tonight. We've got a busy show of panel. We have Dr. Steven Sideroff, who's coming in from LA with us, from UCLA. If you want to pop him up for us, Deb, we're going to start out with our full panel. Hi, Dr. Sideroff. Thank you for coming tonight. And tonight we're going to be talking about your article, How to Effectively Apply Components of Resilience to Reduce the Stressful Impact of the Pandemic on Addiction. And I think we're all grateful for that, as we are feeling like it's post-pandemic, but yet there seems like there's something like lingering out there still. So, I'm hoping you can help us all with that, the anxiety of being resilient from something that's kind of in the past, but yet you watch the news and there's another one around the corner. So
it still adds to our stress.
It sure does. It adds to our stress. Well, thank you so much for being here. And then I'd like to welcome Dr. John Herdman, who is our friend, and he is, Dr. Herdman's coming all the way from Nebraska, although virtually we're all here together, so that's awesome. And you're going to be speaking about your new book, The 12 Core Functions of Substance Abuse Counselor and Assessments. So that's a very important topic for those of us in the field, especially right now with our high acuity that we're seeing with our clients, and to make sure that they're properly assessed and put into the correct level of care. So I want to thank you for that. And then we have a very special guest tonight, Zappy Zapolin. And hi, Zappy.
Hey,
and you're from Florida. I think you're the furthest. I'm here in Palm Springs area, so I'm in Palm. It's 115 here, but
wow.
Yeah, and that's why I've got a cold. If I sound funny, I've had a cold for a week because of the heat. A few reasons. I think it's because of the heat and the cold, and then now we're not wearing masks, so I think all the bugs are out. So I caught one. But welcome, and you were the director of the Lamar Odom's healing journey with ketamine treatments, correct?
Yeah, ketamine treatments plus plant medicine.
Plus plant medicine.
Practice, yeah.
Yes, and daily practice. So that would be the ibogaine and other plant medicine, and we're going to watch a trailer and talk a lot about that, and then we're going to bring our panel up to discuss it as well, or as we're talking, we'll continue this conversation of new treatments, some newer than others that you have been studying for many years, and you've done several other documentaries that we want to hear about, because I believe you did one on the plant medicine and the Costa Rica program that my husband went to, which is the Rhythmia, correct? Yes. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry for a minute there. Yes. But I know that was a great experience for him as well, and that was a different treatment, and he has 30 years of recovery. So this is all factors into our program, Recovery View, and the things that I like to bring out to our audience, and that's everything to help our clients. If you're a professional listening today, or if you're a family member or somebody in need, this is great information for you as well, because this will hopefully help you learn of different ways that we can help each other and help you as professionals if you're struggling with addiction, that we're all here for you, and we're going to be giving the information of our professionals so that you can reach out to them if you have questions after they talk. So what happens, guys, is that I've been running recoveryview.com for over 10 years. Dr. Sideroff was one of my first authors. Dr. Herdman's been an author on and on through the years for me. And we've been a platform for professionals that give CEUs continuing education live at conferences through the years and events. But we've had this online journal that we send out every month or month and a half. And with COVID, we decided to go live and bring our authors to a show. So that's what we've been doing since April of last year. So we've kind of brought our magazine live that has been an actual digital magazine for over 10 years now. So that's the history for those of you who don't know. And we do have a pretty large email list and social media following. And I want to thank everybody who has supported Recoveryview through the years, because it certainly has been a journey for sure to keep it, anytime you're doing a magazine, it's a labor of love. And so it's been my labor of love, and hopefully it's something that we can always, have for the community of professionals and the public at large. That's our goal at Recoveryview. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and start out with Zappy, and Debbie's going to put up a trailer of his movie.
Odom is on a ventilator in a coma. Multiple drugs were found in his system, and there are reports he used synthetic Viagra.
Lamar, he lost his mom at 12 years of age to colon cancer. How can a kid go through that? And then his father had a substance abuse problem on top of it.
Lamar,
whoa,
you're on a journey.
Yeah.
Try to just be with it.
I told him I'd been preparing him for something big, the most powerful plant psychedelic known to man.
If you might set up a purpose, you might start preparing yourself.
They're getting in touch with aspects of themselves that have been elusive, very important aspects of themselves that probably account for some of why they're suffering.
He likely has suffered from chronic PTSD that has re-exacerbated over time as more traumas have occurred.
If I can help all that out with just, a treatment like this, then why not?
LamarOdom.com, REBORN.com. Can you tell us about the journey and a little bit more, kind of give us a summary? I did watch it, the documentary, but I want our audience to know a little bit about it because they haven't seen it probably.
Sure.
And the reason behind it as well, why you decided to do this.
Well, I think this is the best time ever in the recovery space, because finally psychedelic medicine is going to be able to be used in combination with recovery. And I've seen some really incredible healings, and I've just seen this firsthand when people release a lot of the trauma that they're carrying around. A lot of times that's why people are addicted. They're just trying to cover up not feeling the trauma. And I think that when you address the underlying root trauma, maybe it's a childhood stress, and your developmental centers don't even develop properly. You've got patterns in your brain that are maybe negative pattern loops. Maybe you even inherited some of those. But when you don't get to the bottom of those traumas, or you don't create new neural pathways in the brain, then it's just going to be the same thing over and over and over. And that's why, sort of traditional recovery, the rates of effectiveness are not high enough at all. So finally, we have, since 1971, the government put these, laws in place that prohibited using or even studying these psychedelic medicines. And so we really have been set back quite a bit. But now that we're 50 years later and we understand that these things have been taken by millions of people, they're very safe. Many people have had great effect. Finally, we get to work it into the recovery model. And I think people listening here tonight should be really excited, because the opportunity to be a psychedelic guide or a psychedelic therapist in combination with recovery or depression or, coaching, it's wide open. And people, when they're neuroplastic, like they are after a medical psychedelic situation, you've got somebody who's very neuroplastic, and that's when you can change, behavior patterns and things.
Well, yeah, so, Doctor, that's interesting you're saying this, because our next guest, Dr. Sideroff, who you met in the pre-room, he is a neuroscientist, and he has the first research out from UCLA, and we were talking about that when you had clicked off, is for biofeedback and the improvements that biofeedback has done, and he has we have a brain, what is it? Oh my gosh, see, I'm telling you, my brain, because I'm sick, but it's a mind brain room, and I know I just said that wrong, but it's a neurofeedback and a biofeedback machine that we do at our facility, ATS, and Dr. Sideroff, it's his system or his thing. And we go through UCLA, and it's part of his research. And it's a mind-body room. Sorry, but it's a mind-body room. I'm telling you, I have a head cold, but it's a mind-body room, and our clients love it. And we're going to be talking to him about upgrading that. But I've always been very interested in that because, like you said, if you can't get those synapses to connect, right, and figure out what's going on. But it's interesting to me that that some of these, that a psychedelic medication or plant medicine could help. So it's almost like it could just help boost it or something. It did trigger something,
Right.
but it's all about the clinical, because what I'm seeing, what I'm nervous about, and what my husband Jim said that he has seen, that now that people are using ketamine and different plant medicine, that the addicts are taking it out there on the street without any kind of, of course, because you give them any drug, they're just going to try it. And
Right.
plant medicine, I'm sure, has been for a long time, and psychedelics have been around for a long time as like a street drug or a party drug or a spiritual drug. So how do you, try to help us integrate that into our field without,
Right.
I mean, I
Yeah.
believe that it could help. It just seems like it's going to be tricky.
Well, I actually, the good news is it's not really that hard, because it's really about putting somebody in the right set and setting, making it, getting their mindset proper, and then having the setting be right, so that you give them as good an experience as possible. And what happened for me is, I made this movie, The Reality of Truth, with Michelle Rodriguez, the actress, and we put that out. We've had about 15 million people watch it. It's about ayahuasca, San Pedro, these plant medicines these indigenous cultures have. And they're incredible. They've been using it for millennia. And so when I came back from the jungle, I was telling people, that needed it. I was saying, oh, you should go down to the jungle and sit with a shaman. And they were like, Zappy, if I tell my parents I'm going to go sit with a shaman in the jungle, they're going to Baker Act me right now. Okay. It's not happening. So I started going, I need to find a Western medicine approach that these people can use. And I wound up about 5-6 years ago finding ketamine, that Yale University had done this very in-depth study on ketamine in low dose, actually healing people from even treatment-resistant depression. And the way that they found out that was happening was they were doing amputations out in the battlefield, and they realized that the people that were getting the ketamine for the amputation were not committing suicide after the war. And they were like, what the heck's going on here? So they studied at Yale University Medical School, and they put thousands of people through, and they came up with a protocol where you use low dose ketamine, because the science on the ketamine, this is in Nature magazine, it's new science, but it's in Nature. It says that you have this area of your brain called the default mode network. And in there's this little mechanism called your lateral habenula. And your lateral habenula is basically recording all the stress you've ever had in your whole life. And when it becomes too much, your brain goes into this burst mode. And when your brain's in burst mode, it shuts off your dopamine production completely. So you're getting no happiness, no motivation. And the first time you do a medical ketamine treatment, it takes your brain out of burst mode, and you immediately start getting dopamine back. And so I've sat with hundreds of people in clinics and doing at-home things, and I always get these calls from the husband or the wife the next day, and they call up after their first treatment. They're like, oh my God, he just cleaned the garage. Oh, he's been claiming he's going to do that for 5 years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But really, they got their dopamine back. And then when the ketamine, each time you do it, the ketamine metabolizes in your brain, grows new neural pathways in the brain around trauma and depression and things. And so when you think about a traditional antidepressant, it's constantly in your system 24 hours a day, changing your brain chemistry. And with this ketamine, you take it, several times in order to build up enough neural.
So several times in what time period, or what is the time period for the treatment?
Yeah, the Yale University protocol that they came up with for treatment-resistant depression is to do 6 treatments in 2 to 3 weeks. So you build up enough, And then once every quarter, you would do a single booster treatment.
Okay.
But if you don't have treatment-resistant depression, maybe you just, you need 2 treatments or 4 treatments. It's really individual patient specific. But I want to tell you an anecdotal story about a couple people that I gave who are in treatment centers.
Okay.
Who came to do this ketamine treatments.
Okay.
And, I had one guy come. His friend owned a treatment center here in Florida, and his friend had overdosed and tried to kill himself because of his addiction. And they pulled the plug, and he came back to life. And he was really depressed because he couldn't even kill himself, right? And his friend said, look, I own a treatment center. Come for 45 days. I'm going to, do what I can to help you. And he called me up and he said, look, this is my friend. I'm not telling anybody over here at the treatment center, but I'm going to bring this guy 6 times in the next 2 weeks. I'll tell everybody he's getting his knee, rehabbed, and I'm going to bring him for the ketamine treatments because I have to. He's my friend. I can't lose this guy. So they bring him for the treatment. The first time he does the ketamine treatment, which is about 45 minutes, he comes out of it and he was like, oh my God. He's like, Zappy, I was sitting there with him. He's like, I just had this revelation. He said, I just realized that all the stuff that happened to me in my life, it happened to me, but it's not me. He's like, I'm me. And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I think I'm going to go back to the rehab. It's my friend, but he's like, I just fixed I didn't realize that. So long story short, he comes for the treatments and he checks out of the treatment center after 45 days. And the doctor and the nurses and the staff, they all got around, the table to go through each person's records. And they all said, if everybody could be like Pat, this would be the best business in the world. And the only thing that he did differently was he came for the ketamine treatments during it. And when I think about people in recovery, I've been to, AA meetings, to support friends, and I'm there, and these people are, saying, I'm totally sober. It's amazing. I'm totally sober. And then I see them and they're drinking like 6 cups of coffee with 8 sugars in each, and they're smoking a vape, and they're eating a sub sandwich, and they're on a Xanax, and they're like, I'm totally sober. I'm trying not to think about using it. It's like, when we have things like ibogaine, a plant medicine from Africa that can basically in 12 hours dissociate you, wipe your prefrontal cortex so you're not having cravings. And then after that plant medicine session, you go out and you are no longer craving. You're not thinking about it. You're making better choices with your food and your lifestyle, and you're meditating and all these things. It's like, this is what we need as a solution so that people aren't 20 hours a day thinking about using. That's not a life. We have to change these patterns. And, I think ibogaine and ketamine can do it.
How would somebody find the treatment, or how do you go about the assessment and just getting the process started if somebody were interested? Because I know we've been talking to you about, I believe we're going to be doing some ketamine over at ATS. And that's something we have been thinking about, even before I met you, because we've researched that for depression. I know that a couple of Jim's psychiatrists, they already use ketamine in their practice for depression and certain things. So I'm looking forward to that. So the ketamine, I think, is very important, has an important part, as long as there's a clear assessment and it's medically supervised, of course. So what would you, if somebody were to come up to you and say, I love your show that you made, now how would I get this kind of treatment? Because I'm guessing you get a lot of that.
Yeah, we do. So what we're trying to do is make it more accessible to people, because what happened is ketamine being off label means that the doctors that are doing it, they have a lot of insurance and all kinds of stuff. And across the country, it winds up costing you, if you want to do ketamine treatments in a clinic, it's, $500 or more a treatment, and you need 6 treatments. And, not everybody can afford that, even though it's, very affordable, and, versus maybe traditional rehab or talk therapy or, that kind of thing. But we're trying to make it really accessible. So we're doing an at-home version with which we call KetaMD, and it's a telehealth. So you talk to our doctor, you get cleared, they do an assessment, and then you do a treatment with a lozenge at home, you do that with a nurse guiding you over telemed. So you're in the right setting. You have somebody watching you. You're listening to the frequency-based music. There's somebody there at the end to help you to integrate, and you're at home. Because what happened was, when you go to a clinic to do ketamine treatments, you have to get somebody to drive you there and drive you home. You got to take a couple hours, 3 times a week or twice a week. It's very prohibitive for most people. So if people can use KetaMD and do it at home, it's incredible, because they can, do it at night, do it on the weekend. And it's, it's one of the most
that's interesting to do that via tele. Now I have Jamie Lee Justice, who has a bunch of questions, and before we go on to our next speaker, I want to read her comments and questions. She puts, hi Josie and all. Society is addicted to bad foods, caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco. It is socially acceptable. It is so hard to convince people of a social norm. Changing the pattern is crucial. Traditional and functional medications are the key, always has and always will be. And then she asks a question, is ketamine safe? And she says, I'm sincerely curious. She wants to know if it's safe.
Good question. So ketamine is extremely safe. It's the #1 anesthetic used by oral surgeons on children. So if a kid comes into an emergency room and they have a cut inside their mouth, they'll give them ketamine and they'll stitch it up, because ketamine's very fast acting. It doesn't affect your breathing, and it wears off so fast. The half-life is so fast that, that's why this is one of the #1 anesthetics in the world. When they give it to a baby, they're giving it, 10 times as much or more of what we're giving in a mental health related ketamine low dose session. So it's extremely safe. Most people come in on some kind of antidepressants and sleeping pills and all kinds of things. It's the assumption, because ketamine up until now has been sort of a last resort thing. Like, you tried that and you tried that. Oh, maybe there's ketamine, try that. We want this to be a first thing before one of these millennials goes through, years of talk therapy and antidepressants and side effects. We want them to first try ketamine. It's shown to be 75% effective against treatment-resistant depression. So try that first. If it doesn't work, then of course try.
Do you encourage them to do traditional treatment after your ketamine? Do you like to go to a treatment center and do outpatient and some therapy in case they get lost in all that stuff that's happening to them, at home, if they're taking it at home and they don't know where to go with with anything?
Yeah, it's good. It's great. You need to have integration. We're working in integration with coaches and therapists and things, because once you have your first ketamine session, or even some of these other psychedelics like ibogaine, you're very neuroplastic. You're building new dendrites and things around what you like and opportunities that you have. And so, this is really powerful. It needs to be done with medical oversight and people who know what they're doing.
For sure.
But in that context, it's extremely safe. These are some of the least addictive substances on the planet, ibogaine, ayahuasca.
Yeah, because once they do it, then it's gone. It's not, I'm guessing. So we'll have to see. Well, thank you so much I'm glad that we were able to have you speak this whole time, and we were having trouble connecting, but I'd love for you to stay on board, because we're probably going to have some questions with the panel after we have our other two doctor speakers. Okay. Thank you, Zappy. That was wonderful to have you on the show. Oh, okay. That's very good. So now we're going to bring up Dr. Sideroff. No, my sweetheart, it's not. We're live. I've got my grandson here, everybody, and he promised not to talk. Okay, so Dr. Sideroff, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Dr. Steven Sideroff is clinical consultant and psychologist at UCLA, and his article for Recoveryview is, again, like I mentioned, how to effectively apply components of resilience to reduce the stressful impact of the pandemic on addiction. And you've been with us a couple times. I love it when you're able to join our show and submit your wonderful work. I'm just fully honored to have you here tonight. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Josie. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And I'd like to begin by asking the audience what they think addiction and the pandemic have in common.
Okay.
And what they have in common is stress. So we all know, we've all been experiencing some of the effects of the pandemic over the last year and a half. And one of them is stress. Stress is increased by uncertainty, by danger, by anxiety. And on the other hand, stress leads to increased craving and increases in relapse. There are literally dozens of studies that have shown that when you increase stress, you increase relapse. Stress produces a dysregulation of the body, primarily of the autonomic nervous system. And we know that the more the nervous system gets dysregulated, the more uncomfortable a person feels, the more they are going to lose some of their newest coping abilities and resort to older habits of taking care of that dysregulation and that discomfort. And so it's very important within the context of the pandemic, as well as in the recovery process itself, for there to be a consistent approach to training recovering addicts how to regulate their nervous system. So that's the starting point for what I believe is the importance of the pandemic in terms of addiction and addiction liability.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you found that you see more, well, I think we've all probably seen more patients in higher acuities currently since post-pandemic, or I don't even know what we're calling where we are now, if it's kind of, we're over the hurdle of the pandemic. We're still seeing cases out there. There's still countries being shut down now and, new strains coming out. So we're still not completely, like for me, when I got this cold this week, it scared me because even though, I've taken care of the vaccine and, got vaccinated and I have not gotten the COVID or anything like that, I thought I might have it. So I went and got tested anyways, because, we just don't know. I was still worried because I was really sick in bed all week. So I didn't know, what's going on. So, and then people saying, just all the things that are, the stressors that are now, even though it's not completely over, there's still current stressors.
Yeah. Well, we know currently that the census in most treatment centers is right at their limits, that they have waiting lists to get in. And I would suggest that the relationships that I'm talking about are at the heart of why there are such increases. In fact, we know in all kinds of medical practices, the level of emotional dysregulation is really quite high. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I look to my model of resilience, which has 9 components, as a comprehensive way of helping people manage stress. I'll just mention a couple of the most important aspects of my 9-pillar model of resilience. And the first one is people's relationship with themselves. And so it's interesting, we meet with clients who are recovering from addiction, even when they have an intensive treatment program. However much they come in contact with a counselor, with a therapist, they're with their own voice 24/7. Mm-hmm. And so their relationship with themselves, how they treat themselves, how they talk to themselves, is a really key ingredient in recovery. So in my model, I encourage a healthy relationship by identifying what I consider to be the 5 characteristics of a healthy internal parent, which are acceptance, compassion, love, support, and self-care. And so we set up a model of how a healthy internal parent speaks to you, and you always have that right here, right available to compare with the old way that you talk to yourself, which is frequently negative, judgmental, and critical. Mm-hmm. And so it's one way of, again, establishing this kind of baseline way of treating yourself in a healthy way. And I'll mention one other of my pillars, which is physical balance and mastery. And this is where biofeedback and neurofeedback come into play, because it's important to be able to help recovering addicts, recover baseline, recover after a stressful event, feel like they have some control over their physiology and physiological responses. And this is the theory behind the mind-body room that I've set up in your treatment center, is that there's a devoted track to that exact process, restoring the addict's ability to self-regulate on a physical level. My other 8 pillars of resilience feed into that by modulating reactivity to emotional distress and other things. But at the heart of it is really restoring self-regulation, the ability to recover after stress.
You know what I find interesting is that what I've noticed lately with our admissions is that we've been getting more people for the first time, so that they're perhaps after they've been in quarantine and home with their families and teaching their kids and losing their jobs and things like that, they're just like, their stress levels have just like busted. So maybe they were able to cope before for a long time, and then with something like this, a lot of them have just like gone over the edge. If this was all they needed, was one thing like this, and they're done. And so it's interesting because we're getting new people coming through, not just this. And then we have the other, patients that have been coming through over and over, those ones as well. But I'm seeing a lot of newer, I say new, but maybe for the first time coming into treatment because they have been drinking or, using medications to cope over this last year.
Right. Well, I think you've said it very well, which is that people are able to use existing coping mechanisms, but when you pile on more and more stress, their ability to use those coping mechanisms begins to fall away, and they're looking for something that can take away their, whether it's physical pain, emotional pain, mental pain. And that's why you see more and more reaching for one or another type of substance, of drug, to do what they are no longer able to do with their coping mechanisms.
And then with mental health as well, we've been getting, so we have at our treatment center, we have primary substance use disorders and behavioral health. We have before we would only have maybe a couple behavioral health clients. Right now, our census is about 50-50. We have 50% behavioral health, 50% addiction. So we're having to really put up our ante with our track with our behavioral health. So do you have any ideas on that and how we can utilize your mind-body room, your resilience for the mental health clients as well?
Well, again, if you think about the ability to calm your body, the ability to calm it after a stressful event, and also to be able in the midst of a stressful event to give yourself a timeout, and you have the tools to calm your nervous system, you are going to do better in any area that we're talking about. Cognitive ability goes down with stress. Emotional reactivity goes up with stress. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people feel out of control. The cause of anxiety is feeling a loss of control. If you practice some way of regulating your nervous system, such as biofeedback, neurofeedback, and you gain confidence in that ability simply by practicing it, the training process, then when some stress comes along, you feel more confident because you can say to yourself, I have a tool. Now, being able to say I have a tool and having confidence and feeling some control then helps guide that level of activation down. If, on the other hand, you're inundated with stress and you don't feel like you have a tool, now you're starting to worry. Oh, what's going to happen? How bad is this going to get? Am I going to lose control? And now your thinking actually causes that activation to go up. And it's a lot behind how in the mind-body room, how we integrate the biofeedback relaxation techniques with cognitive strategies that all work to increase resilience.
I'm sorry, I put the mic on. So do you do encourage it then for behavioral health clients, of course, is what you're saying, so that we could use it for both? Because like you said, it's definitely for both because of the stress levels and the whole
well, first of all,
I'm just trying to think. I guess it, in a sense, with the tell me how you've used it with the behavioral health specifically in a curriculum.
So to begin with, I've developed a questionnaire that gives an assessment along the 9 dimensions of resilience. So we come out with a profile and we see which of the 9 someone's strengths are and which are their weaknesses. And by the way, all of your listeners right now, all of your viewers, I have on my website what I call a resilience challenge. It's a challenge. A person can go onto my website, answer about 9 or 10 questions, and they will get an estimate. They'll get an assessment of their level of resilience. It's an interesting test to take. It really gives you
that's great. So anybody can go on there, and I know that we're there in our treatment center, but if they want to go on there and just take the test and see where they are with resilience, because another thing that I've noticed throughout all of this is certain people have really thrived. I mean, they're just, they're so successful through the pandemic. Of course, it depends on their profession, but I know I talked to a realtor that said, oh my God, if we could have another pandemic. I mean, he's literally like making the most money he's ever made. And I don't know what that's all about. Or he's a loan officer or something. I don't know. But he was, there's certain people that are just like thriving. But again, it could be it doesn't even matter the career, because but some people are just more resilient. And then others have just like, even if they're a loan officer, they may not be doing okay.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends on the level of resilience. Yeah.
I think there's certainly a variation in people's level of resilience. Again, based on my 9-component model, I think the pandemic, in addition, has unfortunately hit some people harder than other people. That is more circumstantial than whether they're resilient or not.
Yeah, it all has to do with resilience, I believe, because this is a change. This is a complete change. Like if we look historically, there have always, maybe every 100 years, there's something, major that happens on the planet where everything shifts and changes. And so this is one of those types of situations. So if we could just keep getting your message out about resilience, so people can just look at it like, okay, how can I bounce back from this? Because we're going to, keep going. Yeah. And so your books are, so critical right now in having you out and speaking.
Well, one of the things I did at the very beginning of the pandemic, realizing that people can use additional coping tools, is I started a daily program that I called 365 Steps on the Path of Resilience and Success. Oh. And every day I sent out a technique, a tool that people can use, and I did it for an entire year.
Wow.
Finishing just a couple of weeks ago. Oh. And I've gotten such positive feedback from that within the next week, I am going to start another 365-step program.
How can we do that? Because like I said, we're not done with this. I think, we went through the shock of whatever we had to, and now is actually the time for resilience, right?
Yes, definitely.
It's time for resilience. So I personally would love to get those daily affirmations from you, or the daily, nuggets. How could we do that? Do we go onto your website, or is it in?
If anybody went onto my website, drstephensideroff.com, I don't know if I have that STEPS program up yet to sign up for, but you can get on, if you go to my website, you can, number one, you can get a free audio download of a relaxation visualization exercise, and you'll also get put onto my mailing list and will be notified when I start
when it comes out. And then we can also, Dr. Sideroff, once you have it, let us know and give it to Debbie and Beverly, and we'll make sure that it goes on to recoveryview.com.
Very good.
We'll put it out on all our platforms, because I believe we're all going to need this coming forward, in the next 365 days.
It's really helpful to start the day with something that you can focus on that helps you become more resilient.
Thank you. I keep muting because I'm asking my grandson to talk about resilience. I'm like, okay. Oh boy. Well, thank you so much. And we're going to bring you back up at the end. And I love your work. Everything you do is so impactful to our planet. And any way that I can help get that information out to our fellows is definitely an honor for me. So we're going to bring you back up. When I say fellows, I mean, our colleagues and anybody who is listening and on our platform. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll see you in a couple more minutes. And now we're going to bring up Dr. John Herdman. Hi, John. How are you? Dr. Herdman. Welcome.
We've had the West Coast and the East Coast, and now I'm in the Midwest, Lincoln.
Yes. We had we started with East Coast and then West Coast, and now you're right. You're right in the middle. You're all the way here. How is it in Nebraska? What's the weather been like?
Warm and muggy, but not as hot as the desert.
Oh my goodness, no, I know it's definitely. Now tell us when was your book published? And I'm going to put this on mute for a minute. If you can go ahead and tell us about your book.
Sure. I first wrote the global criteria, the 12 core functions of the substance abuse counselor in 1993. It was first published. And so now it's into its 8th edition. And if you can see this, it's a brown cover now. I like to change the cover each edition. And so this just came out like a couple months ago, the 8th edition. Yeah.
Great. So where does that go? Does it go to the colleges and to the counselors, the different associations?
It goes to associations. I have a agreement with the California Consortium of Addiction Professionals and Programs. So they sell my book. I sell it through Amazon. I have another book called A Rational Workbook for Change, which is a CBT model for changing, whether it's addiction or whether it's depression, anxiety, because it's evidence-based practice for treatment. And so those.
We can go, Debbie, if you can put up Dr. Herdman's information we can go to Amazon and get his books.
Right.
So perfect. Yeah. That's great. So now I'm going to introduce you properly. Sorry, I had my grandson. To be honest, before we started the show, he and I were playing chess. He's 6. He's going to be 6 in 2 days. So he knows everything. And believe me, we were having at it with the chess game. I couldn't believe it. But anyway, so he's right here trying to, but Dr. John W. Herdman, PhD, and he's a LADC and CEO of, or LADC, CEO of Herdman Health and Parallels in Nebraska. And tonight we're spotlighting his substance abuse book. And the summary of the article is self-care and stress management is even more necessarily at this time, because we wanted to talk about post-pandemic as well, besides spotlighting your book, which we're going to do. But, as a psychologist and as a counselor, I wanted to also get your ideas on what you're seeing, post-pandemic in your practice and your schools and, in the Midwest.
All right. Well, I have to backtrack a little bit because about 15 months ago, Nebraska shut down just like most of the country did. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, I was in beta testing of an assessment tool. And so the global criteria, the 12 core functions, one of the core functions is assessment. And as I evaluated, where does my stress come from, myself, okay, it's in the assessment core function. Counseling, I feel very comfortable with that after 47 years of experience. But assessment takes time.
Yeah.
And my obsessive compulsive nature had me going in on the weekends to do reports, typing them up, interpreting data, putting it all together, because I find that the assessment report not only does assessment lead to the treatment planning,
Yes.
assessment report often goes to probation, to attorneys, to judges. And if I'm doing a parenting assessment, the kids, whether they stay with the parents or not.
Right.
So I think assessment is very, very important. So my stress was in getting backlogged on doing assessment reports.
Yes.
So even before the pandemic hit, I was partnering with an IT company in California on an assessment process that was cloud-based. And then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
With beta testing, we could send the patient a link, and they would fill out a biopsychosocial history form. Now, all of us professionals in the field, we have to gather history from the client using appropriate interview techniques. And so oftentimes it's a paper and pencil form that people fill out, or you do it during the clinical interview and you're writing handwritten notes. And that takes a lot of time.
Right.
By having the patient fill it out ahead of time, I have cut my interview process from an hour and a half down to about an hour. And so
Right.
that took me half an hour of just the interview time.
That's
Now,
right.
clinically, I still have to review what the patient said, see if it makes sense or if there's contradictions. And then I still have to do my clinical interview with a thorough drug and alcohol history.
Yes.
If I'm doing a mental health evaluation, then I add in the mental status exam. If I do a co-occurring, I do both the ASAM and the MSE. And so by gathering that history ahead of time, okay, and then adding my clinical information, evaluating client strengths and weaknesses or challenges, gathering collateral information from others, filling out an ASAM criteria review. And I know in California they require now the ASAM.
Yes.
And with mental health, the locus, I'm still learning more about that.
Right.
I'm seeing how might I integrate that into the mental health.
Did you finally get that information? Did you get that? I know we were trying to get that over to you.
Yes, I got that stamp. Yeah.
Okay, great. I know when you came out to visit us, we were talking about how important it is right now because of the new legislation for ASAM, the Senate bill that's out now. So it was perfect timing for you to put this together, pre-pandemic, because then everything was at home. So we had to have some sort of technology, and you had it right there. Have you been using that now where clients are able to go in and do their own assessment and send it to their therapist?
Yes, we've done over 300 assessments just in my clinic.
Wow.
And then across the country, we're over 600 assessments.
Okay. Have we signed up for that at ATS yet?
Yeah.
Okay, we need to do that. I'm so glad. I know. No, this is perfect because this is something that we will be doing. We talked about that. There's no reason for us not to, especially now that we're so busy. And like you said, if it can even cut a half hour off, or sometimes just the technical piece of an assessment makes it a little less personal when they're having to sit there and type or hand write and ask the questions. It's nice if it's there, and then they could do more of a talking assessment with the client and building that safe, that safety and that trust with their therapist, and not always have it just be about typing the information. And that alone is so helpful.
So I'm finding it saves half an hour just on the interview.
Right.
But what really saves even more time is clicking a button and having a narrative printed out in Word that then you can put on your letterhead, put any additional information in, and you get a pre-printed 9 to 10 page report that you don't have to type.
Yes.
I've been the subject matter expert on this, and so using my clinical practice, I make a logical if-then, and the narrative reads the best I've ever seen among any pre-printed narratives. And
this is so exciting for all of us and everybody who's on the panel, actually, because even with Zappy and his, Ketamine, they have to have an assessment, some sort of assessment. So if he can send these out to his clients ahead of time, so that the clinician gets it, and Dr. Sideroff with all of his projects he's doing. I mean, for all of us, I think this is going to be such a helpful tool, clinically, to make sure, because as we were talking before, assessment is the key to everything. It's the front door. It's to make sure that anybody's qualified for whatever level of care. Correct? Yeah.
I have a clinic in Columbus, Nebraska that uses the Herdman assessment form, and they tell me that their way of doing it before the Herdman assessment form was to do an ASI, Addiction Severity Index, and they did it paper and pencil.
Right.
And they would interview the person, and that took up to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they'd have to type all that information into a narrative report. They told me, I have to believe them, that it would take up to 5 hours for that whole process.
Well, yeah, exactly. And as an owner of a treatment center, you know, I'd be like, why are you guys taking so long? But I kind of question when they would say it would take out, you know, and then, or they would be after work or come in early to finish. I mean, it does take quite a process for that. And plus they have to see the clients and do the groups. So this just is something that you knew that was, you know, needed, and you were proactive enough to put it together because it goes alongside with your textbooks that you've been writing all these years.
Right.
So I applaud you for that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. And if you're in a clinic like yours, if you have counselors that have to do assessments, they have to spend time doing that.
Right.
So if you can cut an hour or two off of that process, another individual session, add in another group. They don't have to come in on Saturday or Sunday to do.
Especially now that we're so busy, like we were talking about, all our census were full with wait lists, or, you know, what I'm doing is just getting more space because I can get more space and get more therapists so that we could treat more people. But we are the busiest that we've been since I've been clients' words. Then it forces us to, not forces, but I mean, it's right there in their words so that we can actually have an individualized plan for them.
Right.
Right. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. Yeah, that's great.
So Josie, I love the theme for the summer edition here. Okay, compassion, fatigue, and working through the pandemic.
Yes.
Because it made my job easier by having this cloud-based interview process.
Yes.
We were able to do that. We didn't have to have clients have to come into our clinic.
Oh, so
they
great.
could do it remotely. And then we could either do telehealth with them, okay, or they would come in. And so I ended up going to the office on Thursday afternoons for those that didn't have the technology to do telehealth.
Okay.
I'm right now. I'm in my basement office. You can see my background there.
Yeah. Perfect.
But I spent 15 months in this room.
Wow.
The whole winter.
You see, only in Nebraska would you have a big basement. In California, we just have we have a slab, a foundation. We don't have basements like in Nebraska where you can. That's wonderful that you have that space to do that, and then you're safe for any weather that comes through.
Tornado. This is my tornado.
That's your tornadoes, right? And then you can keep working no matter what, with or without a tornado. And then here's Nolan. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for everything that you've done, Nolan. Okay, this reminds me of, I don't know if you guys have seen that commercial where the lady's on her Zoom and then her kid's behind her, and then she's just sitting there drinking her coffee, moving this way, moving that way. That's me drinking my coffee.
Okay.
Never like now.
Let me just say that if anyone listening wants to try the Herdman assessment form, they get 4 free credits by going and registering at herdmanhealth.com.
Oh, you get 4 free CEU credits?
Not CEU, 4 assessment credits.
Oh, 4 assessment credits. I'm sorry. No, wait,
You
no.
scared me.
Okay. So if we go on and then we sign up for your assessment, then we can, as clinicians, do 4 free, and then we can sign up. Okay, that's great. So we get 4 free assessments to see how it works and if we like it. There's no, it's a win-win. And then you can work with us on signing up. And I know it was very affordable when I looked at it. It was well worth it. So
Thank you.
I want to thank you for all that you've done. And now, Deb, can you bring everybody up? We're down to our last 5 minutes of the panel. Hi, Zappy. Hi, Stephen.
Hey, guys.
And we have Nolan now here with us. He's turning 6 this week. Oh, my goodness.
And in 4 days, I'm turning 6.
Oh,
In 4 days, he's turning 6.
Zappy, I wanted to share with you a coffee mug saying that a nurse practitioner gave me. Serotonin and dopamine, technically the only 2 things I enjoy.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, I don't know if that was a question related to ketamine, but you know, what's interesting about ketamine is that this is working on these glutamate sensors, and it's really new science. And I just want to add one thing, because I think, this is something that's been used so much as an anesthetic. But what's interesting about this is that a lot of people think ketamine is like this synthetic compound. And in reality, it basically just takes some salts and some minerals, and they put them together to create and, process it in this new ketamine crystal forms. So you've got this ketamine crystal, and that what's happening, what I love about it is that unlike plant medicine, where there's a lot of variation, where the plant was grown, who harvested it, who, brewed it, with the ketamine, it's just very precise. It's a microcrystal that's the same every time. And it's really kind of the thing that I think can triage Western society. And so it's so exciting to think about, ketamine, ibogaine coming together with traditional rehab and assessment and all the amazing things that, the process of addiction treatment has all these protocols. And then, you drop in psychedelic medicine, which Bill W. himself, the 13th step was that he took LSD as part of his recovery, and he was able to have these incredible sessions and really heal himself. And I think we have to, put back, out of respect for Bill W., we have to put the psychedelic medicine back into recovery.
That's a very good point, because nobody ever wants to talk about that part of his story, that's for sure. And, it's many years later, and like we were saying, there's 10% that are getting treatment or getting recovery. The rest of the 90% are out there, and we're trying to figure out that we never see them even come to our doors, and those are the statistics that we're seeing raising every day. Dr. Sideroff, do you have any comments or any final words for us?
Well, I first of all, thank you for doing these programs, because I think all of these different approaches are significant in the overall care and treatment of our clients. I will just reemphasize the importance of the notion of self-regulation. Many years ago, Peter Levine and I were sort of at the forefront of referring to the problem as autonomic dysregulation syndrome. And it's at the core of all different diseases, whether we're talking about addiction, physical, or emotional. So people can really have an impact on their own health simply by practicing a relaxation exercise 15 minutes a day. If you incorporate biofeedback, that makes it even better. But everybody has access to an audio relaxation process that can make a difference in their lives.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Yeah.
That's a really good, let me just address that. In my Lamar Odom documentary, I came up with this formula for Lamar. It's different for everybody. His formula was ketamine plus plant medicine plus a daily practice brings about a conscious transformation. And I think that daily practice that taps you back into present moment awareness, not caught up in the future, not lost in the past, but just in that present moment, it's so important to get there. And I think with technology and all the media and everything coming at everybody, they're kind of frozen a little bit and unclear what to do. And when you get back quiet, whether that's through meditation, breathing, psychedelic medicine, whatever it is that brings you to that quiet spot, if you can then add meditation, breathing, lifestyle, and bring yourself back to that moment, it's just, that's what kind of sets you free. And I'm so happy that we get it now.
I just want to thank everybody for being part of the show. And this is how Recoveryview has always worked. And again, the vision was East Coast, West Coast, and the middle of the country when I did this 10 years ago with started with one of my friends in New York City, Dr. Tion Dayton, who's helped me with the first articles. But, just having this panel that can collaborate from all over different walks of our recovery field, where I could see where Dr. Herdman's assessments will help all of us, especially if they start out with self-assessments, because we all have to assess our clients. And with Dr. Sideroff's books and all your neuroscience background, and especially right now on resilience, you've been doing this study of resilience for many years since I've known you, and now is the time that it's really, needed in the forefront. And you've got the meditations and the daily things that we can all give our clients, right, to help us with some, for ourselves and our clients. And Zappy bringing, I guess I could say, what's old medicine, it's going to be brought back to new medicine in our field. As you said, with the indigenous, it's been for millennia already. It's been always in the jungle. I don't know that we're quite going to be able to bring the jungle here, but we can bring a little bit at a time and see how we can have science and the studies back it up so that it can become part of what the medicine that we can treat our clients with here without having to go to the jungle. And that's our goal, and that's our vision, right? Amen. So I want to thank everybody, and I look forward to seeing you again on our shows, and then in person whenever we finally have some events that we can all be together. And that'll be coming soon. Okay. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Debbie G. Yes. Oh, and then my husband Jim, who's of course a co-owner, he is wanting me to thank you all from him. He says right now from Jim. Thank you all for being part of the show. Okay. Thank you. Bye.